Sunday, July 2nd, 2017. Thank you guys for the communication today, the correspondence. It's hysterical. I love it. I had been wanting to do a video for some time on a specific topic. I was really trying to save it because it falls in line with a specific step, but I guess I'll do it today on resentment and grudges. Now, the one message I'll go ahead and answer in terms of me trying to help someone that's in recovery and all that. When someone tells me they're smoking weed, I can't help them. Like if they're prescribed weed, that's a little different. But if they're getting bags of weed off of some dealer or something, like, that's not in recovery to me. You know, if someone's prescribed a medication, that's a little different. But if they're doing it to get high, that's different. You know, yes, it may help them with PTSD, anxiety. There's a lot of benefits to a lot of chemicals, but on that specific message that you sent me, no, that's not what that was about. So, to get that out of the way, and I could go much more in depth with that, but you talk to anyone in recovery about helping people who are smoking weed or abusing a medication they're prescribed, touchy subject. A lot of people will not touch that because it's a gray area in recovery. There's not a lot written in the literature, and some certain 12-step fellowships do have some literature. The one I'm in, zero. They have no comment on it, basically. So I can't really speak intelligently on it in terms of literature from my own personal experience. I just don't sponsor or work with people in terms of trying to help them if they're abusing a substance. It's not something, I can't help them. So I hope that makes sense. Hope that answers your question. Resentment is defined as like having feelings of being treated unfairly. We've all experienced it. I think grudges is when you get into having deeper seated resentments. You know, so you were treated unfairly, but you carried that feeling on for a long time, and you're unable to let go of those feelings. I've had a plenty. I'm not an expert at getting rid of them. I have found some things that work. Currently, I would say I have none, only because I've chosen that. I've chosen that path. In terms of people on the internet specifically, for what? My thing has always been with people on the internet, I can't physically see them, touch them, be in the same, neighborhood as them. What's the point? Nothing can be done about that. Even if there is a email, comment, phone conversation, any of that kind of correspondence, at the end of the day, it's kind of pretend. It's kind of all Candyland, So I don't really view any of that as real strong relationships in which I'm going to invest a lot of emotions into, to where I would actually carry a resentment if something were to happen. So to put that level of trust, expectation into any of those relationships, I don't know. There are a few relationships I do have with people through YouTube that, yeah, there's some trust there. There's definitely respect there on both sides. So, yeah, if something were to happen, I don't know. I would probably have some sort of resentment. But once again, how high were my expectations with that relationship? You know, I see a lot of people getting upset with each other over these internet relationships. What do you expect? That's kind of my question. You know, like when I see people that met each other online and fell in love, I'm impressed. I really am. I think that's a wonderful thing because, you know, being able to start a relationship through a conversation online, meet on Skype or FaceTime or however they got to know each other, finding similar interests or finding that they are able to trust each other through a computer, one day meeting, however it worked. It's amazing. It really is. It's powerful. It's not my experience. You know, it's not how I've done things in life. But I forget, I read some crazy statistic about how many relationships these days start online. That's great. That's not how I've lived my life. I can see how a lot of relationships turn into resentments because people trust other people on the internet so much. I'm the type of person you kind of have to earn trust and respect with me. I'm not just gonna, oh, here, yeah, I trust you because you're some guy online or some person online. I'm not just gonna automatically trust you because we have the same interests. Especially if I've never heard your voice, especially if I've never, seen your face or seen you talk. I've seen people do that. Never even talked to a person, never seen their face, never even seen a video of them. Just give them information. And then wonder why things went south. And then they're stuck with a resentment or a grudge, whatever. So, I hope that explains sort of my view on internet, YouTube relationships. I see that stuff go on and people get upset and I go, what did you expect to happen? So, my experience with resentment, I don't know that I ever heard the word resentment until I was probably in recovery. Not that the word was never said, I just don't ever remember hearing it said. So in terms of the internet, I see a lot of people putting themselves in a position to have a resentment or a grudge. I don't do that. And that's me. I'm not saying do what I do and I've got the right way of doing things. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that's kind of what I've done to avoid getting any resentment. In real life, with some people, I feel like it's obvious to me they were bullied in junior high or high school or made fun of. It's pretty obvious from certain behaviors or lifestyles, whatever, or maybe their parents treated them badly, whatever example you can think of. I didn't have a lot of that, when I got to recovery. I didn't have a lot of childhood resentments or grudges. I definitely had some stuff from the streets, whether it was, people that owed me money or fights I got into that I lost. I definitely had grudges over. I wanted to find these people and straighten them out. And when I realized that I was sober and trying to live a different way, it's not a good idea, to go and track people, go track down drug dealers and go track down some guy that, whipped my ass 10 years ago. So, to me, there's basically two types of resentments. Well, actually, there's a resentment and then there's grudges. Resentments typically are more your petty, simple, I could be at a stoplight and a guy looks at me funny and I just want to get out of the car and cuss him out. He might not even be looking at me. He might have sunglasses on and he's looking down the street, but I think he's looking at me. And I get to start thinking, what's he looking at? You looking at me, Mo? What are you looking at, bro? And then for the next 2 hours, I'm thinking about this guy I saw. To me, that's a petty, whiny, wimpy resentment. It means nothing. I rarely have them. I used to here and there. That's kind of a simple example that would happen here and there. Another example would be I would be at like a 12-step meeting and someone would share something I didn't like. And I would think it was directed at me. That person would be talking about themselves. I thought they were talking about me. So I would sit in my head all night thinking, that guy's a jerk. Why was he talking about me? I would go to bed, never think about it ever again the next day. Just forget about it. You know. But then there's grudges, where I really had feelings that I was treated unfairly, disrespected, whatever. And those can last 2 weeks or 2 years, depending on how long I want to stay sick. How long do I want to be a mess? It's a disgusting way to live, I must tell you. I've done it. And the type of grudges that, there are literal physical symptoms of someone that holds a grudge. I won't list them. You can look that up in terms of what that does to someone physically, but it is a sickness. Loss of sleep is a big one. I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever laid in bed having a planned conversation with someone that you want to tell off, and you're going to tell them this, and if they say that, you're going to say this, some of you know what I'm talking about. Then you know what I'm talking about. So, the resentment, yes, is the more petty, simple, childish. And it doesn't even have to be childish. It can be an adult thing. It can just be, I felt disrespected or I was treated unfairly. A grudge can be, I was fired from a job and it really affected my life. Or, the cops harassed me, whatever. And I carry it for a long time. From a recovery standpoint, looking at what can be done to change your life in recovery. Everything is a process of letting go. Everything. Every single action in recovery is an attempt to let go and do something different. And it's pretty much all an act of faith. You do not know it's going to work, but you're willing to try it. Step 1, we're letting go of alcohol and drugs. Step 2, we're letting go of what we thought we believed. 3, we're letting go of control and giving that higher power control, which I apologize I haven't done a video on yet. And 4, which I'm kind of talking about now, we're letting go of these resentments and grudges. But how do you actually let go of them? It's one thing to say, I'm going to get rid of a resentment. I'm going to get rid of a grudge. How do I actually let go of it? Do I want to let go of it? Because sometimes it's easier to be angry or upset with someone. It's easier to sit around and think about how I want to punch somebody in the face or slash their tires or I'm going to make fun of them for the next 6 years or whatever. It's easier to do that. It's harder to take the action necessary to get rid of the grudge. So, if you're questioning how to get rid of them, or do you even want to get rid of them? That's the first real question. Do you want to? If you have come to the point where you want to, there's only so many options, in my experience. And the two options I was always presented with are, do you owe an amends? So did I actually create the resentment? Which, trust me, I've done plenty of times. Or do I need to forgive the person? Just flat out forgive them. Move on. Not always that easy, depending on the situation. The secret maneuver for this one, and I had a situation at work. This has been 5-6 years ago. Guy came to me in a meeting and said, man, I want to do what you do for a living. You know, I think it would help my program. I want to work where you work. I told him how to do it. Got him a job there. This dude starts working there and does nothing. Just like sits around. And out of the blue one night, I clock in on third shift early, and he just leaves without telling anyone. So I had to pick up his slack, especially since I'm the guy that got him on there. So I developed this massive resentment because, you know, I'm the guy that got him the job. He's making me look bad, da-da-da-da-da. I couldn't wait to see this guy to tell him off. I was just going to cut loose on him. Like, I was literally driving around in my car having planned conversations with this guy about what I was going to tell him about how terrible his program was, how terrible his work ethic was, that he was a terrible counselor, because I heard what he was saying to these guys about how to stay clean, da-da-da-da-da. It got so bad I had to call my sponsor. Now, all the while, I wasn't realizing that I wasn't seeing this guy. Usually I saw him at meetings or work or something. Wasn't seeing him. Unbeknownst to me, the reason he left work that night is because he was getting high. He was so embarrassed about this that he actually quit, and my boss didn't tell me. Because he kind of tried to keep that from everybody because he felt bad for the guy. So I didn't know any of that was going on. So I'm just pissed off about this guy, and I've got this resentment that's developed into a grudge, and I call my sponsor and I tell him the situation. Still don't know he's using. And my sponsor says you need to pray that he gets everything you want and have. Because this guy didn't have very much. He was really struggling. And I knew that, although I didn't know the drug use. And I didn't want to do it. You know, I told my sponsor over the phone, I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But in my head, I'm like, I don't want to pray for this guy. I don't like him at this point. But I didn't want to have that sickness in me anymore. I didn't want to have this drive of wanting bad for this person. Because really, he was a good dude. I knew he was in a weird place, but I went ahead and said this prayer. And the prayer was, I said my higher power's name, and I pray that he gets happiness, love, financial security. He gets to live his dreams. He gets the car he wants. He gets to live in a nice, clean house. And he gets long-term sobriety. Amen. And I said that prayer in the morning, at the end of my prayers. I said it at night, at the end of my prayers. And 2 weeks goes by, and I finally saw him as I was pulling into a meeting. I was so happy to see him. And when I walked up to him, he started crying. I didn't know he'd quit the job. I didn't know he wasn't even working there. And I'm walking up about to tell him this stupid resentment story about how I've been praying for him, and I thought we were all about to start laughing. He's standing there crying. He's a grown man. He's crying, saying, I've been using for a month, and I don't know what to do. And my girl's about to leave me, and I'm about to get kicked out, and I'm done. And that was an experience that changed my life. I'm driving around hating this guy. Couldn't stand him. Wanted to tell him off. My sponsor tells me this simple little prayer. That's the only action I had to take, was this little prayer. And the whole time this guy was in hell. He hated himself. Using drugs and miserable. Unbeknownst to me. My life was fine. I was clean. I had a nice place to live. Had a decent car. So it was one of those experiences where I thought I had problems. I thought I had some sort of struggle going on inside of me. And there was this dude crying in front of this meeting. There were other people standing around. He didn't care. He's crying out in front of this meeting. And it was so bad he had to move away. He doesn't live here anymore. He just had to get away from Dayton. And I checked his Facebook like months ago. I don't really like going off of Facebook. It's not a very honest place to see what people are doing, but he looked okay. You know, he looked like he was happy, and I hope that's the case. I should probably call him, but the moral to the story is I had this grudge. And this guy was a friend of mine. Enough so that I really put my neck out and helped him get a job, and he kind of screwed that job up. And I felt embarrassed by that. My own image was at risk. Like that mattered, And I copped this resentment that turned into a grudge, and it could have put a wedge between someone that respected me and cared about me, and this guy was getting high and I didn't even care to notice. Could I have prevented him from getting high? Probably not. Drugs get people high. It had nothing to do with me. But looking back, I look at how petty all that was. I was upset at how I looked and the fact that I had to work at work. God forbid, right? So saying those prayers for that dude really worked for me, and that's the tool I use today. Because of that little lesson, I don't have those kind of problems as much. I typically work alone, so I definitely don't have to worry about, having those types of problems at work. If I'm answering phones, dealing with people over the phone, that's pretty simple. I've definitely had people flip out on me many a times, but I'm so used to dealing with it and de-escalating a situation. It's pretty simple. I know how to handle it. I know how to stay calm, let them say what they need to say, and handle the situation. I've done that a long, long time. Really what I'd like to say is, and especially in relation to addiction, we had a story in Dayton recently that really bothered me. I don't know if I told this one yet. I might have, but I was looking at it last night. About a month and a half ago, we had a 13-year-old kid dead on arrival at Children's Medical, and cause of death was heroin overdose. He's 13. And due to the situation and how it went down, his dad is currently in the county jail, and they are doing everything they can to charge his dad with some sort of negligence because they know the drugs were his dad's. And the reason I'm telling this story and not using any names is I knew his dad. I know his dad. And I knew that kid when he was a baby. And he's gone. He's not here. For what? The way I understood the story, from what I've heard, the kid had done some cocaine before and he thought it was cocaine. It was not, it was heroin. So he was snorting what he thought was coke. And it killed him. 13. And I got kids that age. So it is very easy for me to put myself in that guy's shoes and wonder, what that feels like. Now, I knew that guy when he was clean. I knew him when he was sober. And I'm not going to sit here and say that resentment caused him to get high and he held grudges and he used and it killed the little boy. And I'm not saying anything like that. I have no clue why that guy went back out and started using again. Only he knows. But what I do know is that resentment in any literature is the number one offender of relapse for anyone. It causes more addicts and alcoholics to get high than any other two things put together. Addicts and alcoholics relapse due to emotions. Anger is always a cousin of fear. Fear is always this primary thing. We're afraid. Afraid we're not going to get something, or the way we're going to look, or afraid of what's being said about us, or afraid of what will they think, those types of things. Fear is a constant companion in life. It's the human condition. We're also afraid of, the future. Some of us are running from our past, or how people could perceive our past. I'm blessed in that I've gotten to do a lot of step work, and that can be a lot like therapy. So I've dealt with a lot of that. Fear of the future. Oh boy, that's a scary place. And especially those of you that watch my videos in the corner of the internet that this is in, there's a lot of fear of the future and what's floating around up there in the sky, what the sun's doing, those types of things. I get that can be pretty scary. Trust me, this house is prepared in a lot of different ways for a lot of different things. Because we've had those conversations of what if. And when Brandon's off work and up late and everyone's in bed, my mind wanders. Parental instincts kick in and being secure. I don't know how I went from resentment to all that, but it makes sense to me. I guess talking about fear, and how it connects to anger. But resentment and grudges will always be a part of our lives. It's a matter of how we want to deal with them. And do you want to deal with them? Trust me, there are plenty of times where it was easier for me to have the grudge and just live with it. But I don't know if it's just the older I get, I'd rather be fat and happy any day of the week instead of worried and tangled up about someone else or what the hell they're doing. Why should I care? So I try to do the actions that have always been asked of me. It's just a matter of if I'm willing to do it. So my main question is, how do you guys handle your resentments and grudges? That's from the 12-step perspective on what I was told, what I was shown on how to handle it. How do you guys do it? Because that's all I know. I either owe an amends because I put myself in that position or created the problem to begin with. And amends means to change. That means if I make an amends to you, that means I plan on not doing it again. I need to forgive the person, move on, or do the prayer thing. Pray for that person, which is often hard to do. So I've got like 3 options depending on the situation. What do you guys do? How do you handle your resentments and grudges in a healthy way? I'm interested in this because when I sponsor other guys, they come to me a lot, especially, it seems like I sponsor a lot of guys right now that are working in landscaping crews. So they're out cutting grass, throwing mulch, and they work with guys that are drinking and using. They're coming home every night with all these kinds of problems. And I'm telling them the same 3 things I just told you. Do you guys have any tricks on how to handle resentments, grudges, how to de-escalate situations that have maybe worked for you? I'd love to hear about it if you got them, if you're interested. The gentleman that sent me the question about helping someone, especially in relation to someone that's using marijuana. We're seeing more and more people that are able to get off opiates, get off coke, get off booze, and go on what we call like a marijuana maintenance program. It's wrong of me to disclude them from recovery. It is. I'm not a gate guy. I'm not the person in charge of who's in recovery and who's not. And I need to be more open-minded to people that are doing that. To be honest, all 12-step fellowships right now, except for honestly Marijuana Anonymous, are in an uproar about what to do with people that have kind of moved on to a marijuana maintenance program. Now, in the the state I live in, obviously, it's not that easy. But you got a lot of other states that you have people that are card carrying, able to purchase marijuana. So maybe I will do a video at some point just kind of on my experience, but a lot of it would be based in opinion because I don't have a lot. I only have small amount of experiences in dealing with it. It's something I need to explore more since it is such a taboo in the recovery community. But I think ultimately it's something I need to learn more about before I start saying, no, this person can't be helped or that person can be helped. So I'm definitely open to learning more about how people can be in recovery as they're smoking marijuana. So I really appreciate that question because as I've done this video, it's just been in the back of my mind of, it's not my place to say, who's clean, who's not, based on what chemicals they're on. There are plenty of people who are prescribed a lot of medications that are in recovery. And they work really solid programs. And I've looked at them and they tell me what meds they're on and I'm going, wow, that's a lot of medication. It's not my business. So, something to think about, food for thought, whatever. Thank you guys for watching the videos, asking questions. Thank you for the correspondence today. Some of the comments and thoughts you sent me were hysterical. If I don't talk to you around the 4th, have a great 4th, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.